Many people may not know this, but Bradford used to be a big, rustling, bustling town of railroads and people and restaurants and anything that you can imagine that can possibly be in a big town. However, during the 1900s, there was a humongous fire that knocked out approximately 80% of the entire town. This is why you see Bradford as small as it is today. My name is Nathan Rose, and I'm here to talk to you today about the Bradford Railroad Museum in hopes that you will come to the museum and help fund their operation that they are trying to do. I will be talking about some of the history of the railroad and the museum that was built, along with other things. Some description was that the railroad was built in 2002, and it is a nonprofit organization, so you have to file a 1024, which states to the federal government that you are a nonprofit organization. And that was filed in around 2002. Now, the building has been there ever since. There are no really stats or facts about the organization besides the fact that every single year they do numerous things around the town, such as hosting festivals, opening the museum to children. Sometimes the schools come out and they do tours for the children to come see, because it is important for the children to learn about the history of the railroad. A lot of people say that it is a great place, the Railroad Museum is a great place to learn about the history of the town. And that was from the director at the Railroad Museum. Like I said before, it is a nonprofit organization that is ran by 2002 by the same owner, who is there every Saturday and Sunday from April to December. This shows how significant it was for the railroad to be in Bradford, because they still want to keep the museum up and running. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about the railroad really quickly. The railroad in Bradford, there was a portion of about 11 tracks that ran through the town, and this consumed the majority of the entire town. And like I said, 80% of this town was wiped away during a humongous fire that came through town. But one significant thing that was really cool about the railroad is that in Bradford, it is rare, along with other little cities, for a railroad to be in that town, and that's why it is so significant to our town. Another really cool thing that many people may not know is the fact that when Abraham Lincoln was assassinated, he rode on a railroad across the country from place to place for the people across the country to say goodbye to their final president. Now, one of the interesting things is that Abraham Lincoln's train actually stopped in Bradford for a time being for people to come and see. So the people that lived in that time period actually got to see Abraham Lincoln's, where he was and his station and everything else. Now, why the Bradford was chosen for the railroad is because every 100 miles or so there should be a station where you should be able to get, just like with your car, maintenance done. And so it was an equal distance between Columbus and Indianapolis. Those were two of the big cities, so Bradford got to be chose there. This is why it is important for the railroad to be in Bradford. Now, some other important things are that Bradford's decline of the railroad happened because of the economic issues. What many people do not know is that during this time, the railroads wanted the people to carry, the trains that carry people from place to place, and at the cost of the ticket, they were losing money on the ticket rather than gaining money. So basically, they were losing money. But this is all not very important. Now let's get back to the Railroad Museum. The Railroad Museum is open on Saturdays and Sundays from April to December, and then every year after that. They're open from about 11 to 1 on Saturdays, and from about 12 to probably 2 on Sundays. I really highly advise people to keep going, because they are ran by grants and donations and funds from other people. They're not ran by the admission cost alone. Now, this is just basically some vague stuff about the Railroad Museum. I actually went there, and they have some really cool stuff in there, including a model of the town and how it was built. 3 reasons why I want you guys to go and support the Railroad Museum is because, 1, to keep the organization in business. It doesn't, like I said, it's a nonprofit organization, and those organizations a lot of the time struggle because they do not have the money. Another thing is to learn how important the railroad was to Bradford. I know some people think of Bradford as a little town, but it used to not be that way. It used to be a big town. And so if you learn about the railroad by visiting this museum, you can see a different perspective on how the town was. I also want you to learn more about Bradford and the history of the town, not just about the railroad. My challenge to you guys as an audience is to take a second look at how you view Bradford and come support this not well-known organization. Paul Johnson once said, "As a child, I found railroad stations exciting, mysterious, and even beautiful, as indeed they often were." This is what I hope, that by visiting the Bradford Railroad Museum, that you will be able to understand where I'm coming from and how important the railroad was. For more information on the Railroad Museum, you can visit www.bradfordrr.org or simply go to Google and type in Bradford Railroad Museum. Thank you, and I hope to see you there soon.